My neighbor knocked on my door and said my daughter's name. Then she said her husband's name. And in that moment, I understood why my daughter had been coming home so late. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten me. She just looked me in the eyes and said, "My husband is having an affair with your daughter."
Greetings, dear listeners. Before I begin my story, I ask you to support this channel. Please subscribe and hit the like button. It helps stories like this be heard. And write in the comments what city or country you are listening from. It always warms my spirit to see how many of us there are. And now, enjoy the story.
My neighbor knocked, and my daughter's secret fell apart. The day my neighbor knocked on my door, I already felt tired in my bones. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind that comes from years of holding your family together with quiet hands and a hopeful heart. It was late afternoon. The sun was low, soft and orange, like it was trying to be kind. I had just wiped the kitchen counter and turned off the stove. The house was quiet, the way it often was these days. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, just 3 slow taps. I remember thinking, who could that be? I wasn't expecting anyone. My daughter lived with me, but she hadn't said she was bringing a friend. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door. My steps felt heavy. Something in my chest felt tight, though I didn't know why. When I opened the door, I saw my neighbor. Her name was Claire. She lived 2 houses down, the one with the white fence and rose bushes. She looked different that day. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept. She held her purse tight against her chest. Her hands were shaking. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded and stepped aside. I didn't smile. I didn't ask questions. Something told me this knock carried weight. She walked into my living room and stood there, not sitting, not moving. The air felt thick. The clock on the wall sounded louder than it ever had. "I don't know how to say this," she said. I waited. I had learned long ago that rushing people only made things harder. She took a deep breath. Then she said my daughter's name. And in that moment, before she even finished her sentence, I felt my heart begin to break. I have always believed that mothers feel things before they understand them. We feel it in our stomachs, in our chests, in the quiet moments when our children walk past us and avoid our eyes. My daughter, Lena, had been distant for months. Not rude, not cruel, just far away. She smiled less. She stayed out late. She guarded her phone like it was a secret diary. When I asked her how she was doing, she always said, "I'm fine, Mom." And I wanted to believe her, so badly. I told myself she was just growing up, that young women go through phases, that not everything needed to be questioned. I was wrong. Lena was my only child. I had her young, and we grew up together in many ways. Her father left when she was 5, not with anger, not with shouting, just with silence and packed bags. After that, it was always the 2 of us, me and my girl. I worked long hours at a small insurance office, nothing fancy, just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. Every morning, I woke her up for school. Every night, I checked her homework. Every weekend, we shared quiet breakfasts and old movies. I wasn't perfect. I was tired, sometimes impatient, but I loved her with everything I had. I taught her to be kind. I taught her to be honest. I taught her to respect herself and others. Or at least, I thought I did. When Lena finished college, she moved back home. Jobs were hard to find. Life was expensive. I didn't mind. I was glad to have her close again. She got a job at a local marketing firm. She started dressing differently, more polished, more careful. She came home later, sometimes past midnight. "Work dinner," she would say, or "just friends." I nodded. I trusted her. Maybe that was my mistake. Claire, my neighbor, had moved in about a year earlier. She was friendly but quiet. She waved when she passed, she kept her yard neat, she smiled politely and kept conversation short. Her husband Mark was the opposite, always talkative, always cheerful. He helped carry groceries once, fixed a loose fence panel for me. Good man, I remember thinking. I had no reason to think otherwise. Claire stood in my living room that afternoon like she was carrying a heavy bag of stones. She said, "I saw your daughter last night." My throat felt dry. I didn't answer. "She was with my husband." The room seemed to tilt, just a little. "At first, I thought I was mistaken," Claire continued. "I didn't want to believe it." Her voice broke. She stopped and pressed her lips together. "They were holding hands," she said. "They didn't see me." I sat down slowly. My legs no longer felt strong. I wanted to say she was wrong. I wanted to laugh it off. I wanted to protect my child. But the truth had already begun to settle in my chest. I thought of all the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way Lena avoided eye contact when Mark's name came up at neighborhood gatherings. I thought of the times Claire seemed tired, distracted, sad. All the pieces began to connect, and I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. "I'm not here to fight," Claire said quietly. "I just couldn't carry this alone anymore." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "I needed you to know," she said. I nodded slowly. My heart felt like it was folding in on itself. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, and I meant it. After Claire left, the house felt different. Too quiet, too empty. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wood grain like it might give me answers. I raised this child. I taught her right from wrong. So how did we get here? I didn't cry right away. Shock has a way of numbing you. I just sat there, listening to the refrigerator hum, listening to my own breathing, waiting for my daughter to come home. That night, Lena walked in like nothing was wrong. She kicked off her shoes. She smiled. "Hey, Mom," she said. I looked at her. Really looked. She looked tired, older somehow. "Sit down," I said softly. She hesitated. Then she sat. The silence between us stretched. "Is something wrong?" she asked. I took a deep breath. I spoke slowly. "Claire came by today." Her face changed, just for a second, but I saw it. And in that moment, I knew. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "She told me everything." Lena looked down at her hands. Her shoulders slumped. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. Those words stayed with me, because things like this don't just happen. They grow. They are chosen. I felt sadness more than anger, a deep, aching sadness, not just for Claire, but for my daughter and for myself. That night, after Lena went to her room, I stood by the window. I watched the streetlights flicker on. I thought about the lessons we pass down, the mistakes we repeat, the quiet ways families break, and I wondered how love could hurt so many people at once. The things I thought love would fix. After that first conversation, nothing in the house felt the same. The walls were still standing, the furniture was still where it belonged, but the air felt heavier, like it was holding secrets that had been there all along. Lena stayed in her room the next morning. I heard her moving around quietly, careful not to make noise. She always did that when she felt guilty. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't open my phone. I just sat there, listening to the silence. I kept thinking about how we got here, not just the affair, but the long road that led us to this moment. When Lena was little, She was the kind of child who watched more than she spoke. She noticed moods. She sensed tension. She learned early how to stay out of the way when adults were tired or sad. After her father left, she changed, not in a loud way, in a quiet one. She became more careful, more eager to please. If I looked tired, she cleaned her room without being asked. If I looked sad, she brought me drawings or silly jokes. I used to tell myself she was just kind, but now I wonder if she was afraid of losing me too. I worked a lot when she was growing up, not because I wanted to be away, but because bills don't wait for feelings. Some nights I came home too tired to talk. I'd kiss her forehead, ask about school, and fall asleep on the couch. She never complained. She never asked for more. And maybe that was the problem. Children shouldn't have to be strong all the time. They shouldn't feel like they have to earn love by being easy. I didn't see that then. I see it now. As Lena grew older, she became beautiful in a quiet way. Not the kind that shouts for attention, the kind that makes people look twice. Men noticed, teachers noticed, neighbors noticed. I noticed too, but I didn't say much. I trusted that she knew her worth. I taught her to focus on school, on independence, on not needing anyone. But maybe I forgot to teach her how to set boundaries, how to walk away when attention turns dangerous. Claire and Mark had been married for 10 years. That's what I learned later. From the outside, they looked solid. Not perfect, but steady. They hosted barbecues. They took walks together in the evenings. They waved to neighbors and laughed easily. But appearances can lie. Claire later told me their marriage had been quiet for a long time. Not abusive, not dramatic, just empty. She said they talked about groceries and bills, but not about feelings. She said she felt invisible. Lena met Mark through neighborhood gatherings. At first, it was harmless. Small talk, friendly smiles. He complimented her work, asked about her day. "She listens," Lena once said about him. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Listening can feel like love when someone feels unseen. Over time, their conversations grew longer, more personal. He told her about his stress at work, about feeling unappreciated at home. She listened, she nodded, she understood, and she felt needed. That's a powerful thing for someone who has always been trying to be enough. I remember one evening when Lena came home glowing, not happy, just alive. She cooked dinner for us. She laughed more than usual. "Good day?" I asked. She smiled and said, "Yeah, just felt appreciated today." I should have asked more. I should have leaned in. Instead, I smiled and said, "I'm glad." Claire started changing too, though I didn't notice at first. She became quieter. She stopped tending to her roses. Sometimes I saw her sitting on her porch, staring into nothing. I thought she was just tired. We all get tired. I didn't know her world was breaking. The truth is, no one wakes up one day and chooses to hurt others. They choose small comforts, small secrets, small lies. They tell themselves it's temporary, that no one will know, that no one will get hurt. But secrets have a way of growing teeth. Lena told me later that it started with messages, then phone calls, then meetings that felt accidental. I kept telling myself I would stop. I just didn't. I listened, not to judge, but to understand. Because understanding doesn't mean approval. It means facing the truth without turning away. That afternoon, after Claire's visit, I knocked on Lena's door. I didn't want the truth to rot in silence. She opened it slowly. Her eyes were red. "I know I messed up," before I spoke. I nodded. "Yes," I said. We sat on her bed, not touching, just close enough to feel each other's presence. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered. I believed her, but intention doesn't erase impact. I told her about the nights I waited up for her, about the worry that sat in my chest. She listened, really listened. "I didn't think about how this would affect you," she said. That hurt more than anything else. Not because she meant it cruelly, but because it was true. That night, I lay awake thinking about love, about how easily it gets confused with attention, about how loneliness can sound like kindness. I thought about my own life, the compromises I made, the things I accepted because I didn't think I deserved more. And I wondered what parts of myself my daughter had learned from me. I knew then that this story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about patterns, about silence, about the things we don't say to protect peace, and how that silence can quietly destroy us. When silence started speaking louder. After the truth came out, we began living around it instead of through it. Nothing was said unless it had to be said. Nothing was asked unless it couldn't be avoided. Lena still went to work. She still came home at night. But something in her had folded inward. She stopped humming in the kitchen. She stopped lingering in shared spaces. She became careful with her presence, like she was afraid of taking up room. I watched her from a distance, unsure of how close to stand. A mother's love doesn't disappear when her child makes a mistake. It stretches, it aches, but it stays. Still, I couldn't pretend nothing had happened. Every time I looked at her, I saw two people. The little girl who used to sleep with her hand wrapped around my finger, and the woman who had stepped into someone else's marriage. Both were my daughter. Claire stopped waving when she passed our house. I didn't blame her. I saw her once at the grocery store. She stood in the cereal aisle, staring at boxes without reaching for any. I wanted to say something, anything, but what words could fix what was broken? So I walked past her in silence, and that silence stayed with me long after. Mark stopped coming around the neighborhood as much. When he did, he avoided eye contact. He no longer offered help, no smiles, no greetings. It was like he had shrunk, like guilt had made him smaller, or maybe shame. One evening, Lena came home later than usual, later than she had since the truth came out. I sat on the couch pretending to read, but my ears were tuned to the door. When it opened, she froze. She hadn't expected me to be awake. "I just needed some air," she said quickly. I nodded, but the old fear returned. Fear doesn't disappear easily. It remembers too much. I didn't ask where she had been. I didn't want to hear another lie or another half-truth. Instead, I said, "Are you okay?" She sat down slowly. Her shoulders sagged. "I don't know," she said. That was the most honest answer she had given in a long time. Over the next few weeks, cracks began to show everywhere. At work, Lena started making mistakes. Small ones, but enough to notice. She came home frustrated, exhausted, hollow. "I feel like I don't know who I am anymore," she said one night. I wanted to tell her that mistakes don't define us, but I also wanted her to understand that actions matter. So I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only honest response. Claire filed for separation. The news spread quietly. No shouting, no drama, just a few whispers between neighbors. A moving truck one weekend. I watched from the window as Claire packed her life into boxes. Each box looked heavy. I wondered how many memories fit inside cardboard. Lena saw it too. She stood beside me, her arms crossed tightly. "She's leaving," she whispered. "Yes," I said. Neither of us spoke after that. That night, Lena cried. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears that soaked into her pillow. I stood in the hallway, listening. My hand hovered over her door. I didn't go in. Sometimes pain needs space to be felt. The relationship between Lena and Mark didn't survive the truth. Secrets lose their power when they are exposed. What once felt exciting now felt heavy, unreal, wrong. They don't see you the same when everything is out in the open, Lena said. I knew that was true. Affairs live in shadows. They don't survive daylight. Mark tried to reach out again. Texts, calls. Lena ignored them. I can't be that person anymore, she said. I wanted to believe her. But change isn't proven by words. It's proven by time. One afternoon, I found a letter on the kitchen table, addressed to Claire. It wasn't sealed. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. The weight of it was enough. Lena came home and saw it still there. I don't know if I should send it, she said. You don't always get forgiveness, I replied gently, but you can still take responsibility. She nodded. That letter stayed on the table for days. I began to notice how tired I was, not just physically, but emotionally. Carrying my daughter's shame, carrying a neighbor's pain, carrying my own guilt for not seeing things sooner. It was a heavy load for one heart. One night, I sat alone in the living room. The lights were off. Rain tapped softly against the windows. I thought about how families are tested, not by big disasters, but by quiet failures of honesty. I wondered if love could survive this, not the kind that forgets, but the kind that learns. I knew then that something had to change. This tension couldn't live in our home forever. We couldn't keep stepping around the truth like broken glass. Sooner or later, someone bleeds. The moment I chose truth over comfort. The turning point did not come with raised voices. It did not come with slammed doors or harsh words. It came on a quiet Sunday morning, the kind of morning that usually brings peace. Soft light through the windows, the smell of coffee filling the house. But that morning, peace felt like a stranger. Lena sat at the kitchen table staring into her cup. She hadn't slept. I could see it in her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had pressed her down. I sat across from her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "We can't keep living like this." She nodded slowly. "I don't know how to fix it," she whispered. I took a deep breath. I had been holding this in for weeks. "You can't fix what you broke," I said gently, "but you can decide who you want to be after it." She looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw fear there, not of punishment, but of becoming someone she didn't recognize. I told her about Claire, not the details of the betrayal, but the aftermath. I told her how Claire stood at my door shaking, how she didn't yell, how she just wanted the truth to live inside her. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "She didn't think she would ever talk to you," she said. "Pain finds its voice eventually," I replied. Then I said the hardest thing I had to say as a mother. "If you stay in this house," I told her, "you have to face what you did." She stiffened. "I'm not throwing you out," I continued quickly, "but I won't protect you from the truth anymore." She swallowed hard. "You need to apologize," I said. "Not to feel better, but because it's the right thing to do." She nodded. "And you need to stop seeing him completely," I added. "I already have," she said quietly. I watched her carefully. This wasn't the time for blind trust. That afternoon, Lena asked if I would go with her to Claire's house. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to support my daughter, but because I wasn't sure Claire wanted to see either of us. Still, we walked down the street together. Slow steps, no talking. The house looked empty. the windows bare, the roses gone. She moved, Lena whispered. Yes, she had moved on, and we were left standing with what remained. On the front door, taped carefully, was an envelope, Claire's handwriting. Lena stared at it like it might disappear. Take it, I said softly. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a short note. I know everything now. I am choosing to leave with dignity. I hope you choose better for yourself. No anger, no blame, just truth. Lena broke down then, right there on the sidewalk. I held her, not to excuse her actions, but to remind her she was still human. That night, Lena made a decision. She told me she wanted to move out, not because I asked her to, but because she needed space to change. I need to learn how to stand on my own, she said. I nodded. Growth often begins with distance. Helping her pack felt strange, like helping her leave for the first time all over again. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Every folded shirt felt like a memory. Before she left, she stood in the doorway and said, I'm sorry for what I did to you. Those words mattered, not because they erased the pain, but because they acknowledged it. I love you, she added. I love you too, I replied. Love doesn't disappear when truth arrives. It just changes shape. That night, after she left, I sat alone. The house felt too quiet. But for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt honest. I knew then that this was the beginning, not the end. The beginning of healing. For her, for me, and maybe in some small way, for Claire too. Learning how to breathe again. The first morning after Lena moved out, I woke up before the alarm. The house felt different. Not empty exactly, just still. I walked past her room without thinking, then stopped. The door was open. The bed was neatly made. It felt like a chapter had closed. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. For years, my days had been shaped around her presence, her footsteps, her voice, her late-night returns. Now there was only quiet. I made coffee and sat by the window. Outside, the street looked the same. Life, it seemed, had not paused for my heartbreak. Lena called that evening, not to talk about feelings, just to say she arrived safely at her small apartment. It's not much, but it's mine, I smiled to myself. That's how it starts, I replied. We kept the call short. Neither of us was ready for deeper waters yet. Days passed, then weeks. We spoke every few days, sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing at all. We didn't talk about Mark. We didn't talk about Claire. Not avoiding, just healing slowly. I began noticing things about myself, how much of my life had been shaped by caring for others, how rarely I had asked what I needed. In the evenings, I took walks, slow ones, the kind where thoughts come and go without being chased. I watched the seasons change, leaves falling, light shifting. It reminded me that nothing stays frozen forever. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Claire. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a simple note. I'm doing okay. I wanted you to know I don't blame you. I hope peace finds all of us. I sat down and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Sometimes forgiveness arrives quietly. I didn't show the letter to Lena right away. I wanted to wait. Healing has its own timing. When I finally did, she closed her eyes and took a long breath. I hope she's happy, Lena said. That's all we can hope for, I replied. Lena began therapy. She told me this one afternoon, casually, like it wasn't a big thing. "I need help understanding myself," she said. I was proud of her, not for being perfect, but for being willing. Months passed. She sounded stronger on the phone, clearer. "I'm learning how to be alone," she said once. "It's harder than I thought." "Yes," I told her, "but it's important." I learned, too, how to let go without cutting love off, how to support without shielding consequences. That balance is not easy, but it is necessary. One Sunday, Lena came over for dinner. Just dinner, no heavy talks planned. She helped chop vegetables like she used to. Our movements felt familiar again. At the table, we laughed softly. Not forced, not loud. Real. Before she left, she hugged me longer than usual. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered. "I never will, but I will always choose truth." She nodded. That was the difference now. That night, I realized something important. Love doesn't mean protecting someone from pain. It means walking beside them while they face it. And sometimes it means stepping back so they can grow. The house no longer felt broken. It felt lived in again, not by the past, but by possibility. What I know now. Time has a way of smoothing sharp edges, not by erasing what happened, but by teaching us how to carry it. When I look back now, I don't just see the pain. I see the lessons hidden inside it. They were hard lessons, but honest ones. Lena is still finding her way. She calls more often now, not because she has to, but because she wants to. She sounds lighter, not perfect, just more present, and that is enough for me. Sometimes I think about Claire. I imagine her in a new place, new routines, new mornings. I hope she wakes up without heaviness in her chest. I hope she trusts again. Some stories don't need closure between people. They close quietly inside us. As for me, I've learned to listen more closely, to words, to silences. I've learned that love without truth is fragile, and truth without compassion is cruel. We need both.